The gunshot that echoed through the canyon that morning in August of 1877 was not meant for Gabriel Irving, but it changed his life forever when he found the woman stumbling through the sagebrush with blood on her torn calico dress and no memory of who she was. Gabriel had been tracking a wounded elk through the rocky terrain outside Oroville, California, when he heard the shot ring out from somewhere beyond the ridge. His hand went instinctively to the Colt at his hip, though he rarely had cause to draw it these days. The mining town of Oroville had settled into a quieter existence since the gold rush days, and Gabriel preferred it that way. He was a man of few words, content to work his small ranch on the outskirts of town and keep to himself. Some folks called him the silent cowboy, though never to his face. He simply did not see the point in filling the air with unnecessary conversation, when action spoke clearer than any words ever could. He urged his bay gelding forward, climbing the rocky slope with caution. The August sun beat down mercilessly, and sweat trickled down his back beneath his dusty shirt. When he crested the ridge, he saw her immediately, a figure in a pale blue dress staggering through the scrub oak and manzanita bushes. Even from a distance, Gabriel could see she was in trouble. He kicked his horse into a canter, closing the distance quickly. As he drew near, the woman turned toward him, and he saw the wild fear in her eyes. She could not have been more than 23 or 24, with dark auburn hair falling loose from what had once been a careful arrangement of pins. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, and there was indeed blood, though as he dismounted and approached carefully, he realized it was not hers. "Easy now," Gabriel said, his voice rough from disuse. He spoke so rarely that his words often came out hoarse. "I am not going to hurt you." The woman stared at him with green eyes that seemed to look right through him. Her lips moved, but no sound came out at first. Then she whispered, "I do not know, I do not know." "Do not know what?" Gabriel asked, holding his hands where she could see them, showing he meant no harm, anything. The word came out broken. "My name, where I am, what happened." Her hand went to her head and she swayed on her feet. "There was shooting. Men shouting, I ran. I just ran." Gabriel caught her as her knees buckled. She weighed hardly anything, and up close he could see the bruise forming on her temple, partially hidden by her hair. Someone had struck her hard enough to muddle her memory. The blood on her dress was splattered, not flowing from a wound, which meant she had been close to violence but not necessarily its direct victim. "Can you ride?" he asked. She nodded, though uncertainty clouded her features. Gabriel helped her onto his horse and swung up behind her. She tensed at first, then seemed to realize she had little choice but to trust him. As they rode back toward his ranch, Gabriel's mind worked through the possibilities. A robbery gone wrong, perhaps, or a stagecoach attack. There had been increased bandit activity in the foothills lately, despite the sheriff's best efforts. The woman said nothing during the ride, and Gabriel was content with the silence. His ranch house came into view as the sun climbed higher, a modest structure of weathered wood with a barn and corral. It was not much, but it was his, built with his own hands over the past 5 years since he had settled in Oroville. He helped her down and guided her inside, where the interior was sparse but clean. Gabriel was a man who valued order in his surroundings if nowhere else. He settled her into the single chair by the table and fetched water from the pump outside. When he returned, she was staring at her hands as if they belonged to a stranger. "Drink this," Gabriel said, offering the cup. She took it with trembling fingers and drank deeply. "I am going to check that head wound. May I?" She nodded, and he gently parted her hair to examine the injury. The skin was split slightly, but the bleeding had stopped, nothing that would not heal, though the blow had clearly been severe enough to scramble her thoughts. "You were lucky," Gabriel said. Could have been worse. Lucky, she repeated as if testing the word. I do not feel lucky. I feel empty, like someone hollowed me out and left just the shell. Gabriel understood emptiness. He had carried his own hollow feeling for years now, ever since the war had taken his brother and his parents had passed from fever in the harsh winter of 1873. He had learned to live with the silence inside himself, but he imagined waking up with no past at all would be a different kind of terrible. Memory might come back, he said. Head injuries can do strange things. And if it does not? Her green eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made something shift in his chest. Then I suppose you start over. She considered this, then nodded slowly. Start over, yes. A strange light came into her eyes. I want to start over. Maybe this is a chance. Maybe whatever came before was not worth remembering. Gabriel poured himself water and leaned against the counter, studying her. Most people who lost their memory would be frantic to recover it, but she seemed almost relieved. What had her life been before that she would rather begin anew than fight to remember? You need a name, he said finally. Cannot go around with nothing to call you. She smiled faintly, the first hint of any expression beyond fear and confusion. Then I will choose one. If I am starting over, I should choose who I want to be. All right. She thought for a long moment, her gaze drifting to the window where late summer wildflowers bloomed in defiant splashes of color against the dry grass. Clara, she said finally. Clara Foster. That sounds like someone who could start fresh. Gabriel nodded. Clara Foster it is. He did not mention that choosing a surname might complicate things if her real identity ever surfaced, but he supposed that was a problem for another day. I am Gabriel Irving. Folks call me other things, but Gabriel will do. Thank you, Gabriel, Clara said, and the way she spoke his name, careful and deliberate, made it sound like something more than a simple acknowledgement. The first days were awkward as they navigated the strange situation. Gabriel was not accustomed to having anyone in his home, and Clara was learning how to exist as a person with no past. He offered her his bed and made himself a pallet in the barn, despite her protests. It would not have been proper otherwise, even out here where propriety often took a back seat to survival. Clara proved surprisingly capable despite her memory loss. She could cook, which suggested some kind of domestic training. She could read and write, evidenced by the books on Gabriel's shelf that she gravitated toward. She could ride a horse, though she claimed not to remember learning. Her body remembered what her mind had forgotten. How do you live out here so quietly? Clara asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sun paint the western sky in shades of orange and purple. Does it not drive you mad, the silence? Gabriel considered the question. I like the quiet. Too much noise in the world already. But you not want someone to talk to. Friends, family, had family once, got quieter when they were gone, got used to it. Clara turned to look at him and he could feel the weight of her gaze even as he kept his eyes on the horizon. That sounds lonely. Maybe, but lonely is not always bad, means nobody can disappoint you. Or surprise you, or make you laugh, or remind you that you are alive and not just going through motions. Gabriel had no answer to that. She was right, of course, but he had built his life around the simplicity of solitude. Letting someone in meant risk, and he had learned that loving people meant eventually losing them. 3 days after Gabriel found Clara, the sheriff rode out to the ranch. Sheriff Tom Morrison was a grizzled man in his 50s who had kept the peace in Oroville through fair judgment and a quick draw when necessary. Gabriel had always respected him, though they were not what anyone would call friends. Gabriel, the sheriff greeted, tipping his hat. Heard you might have some information about the incident up in the canyon. Gabriel had been expecting this. What incident? Stage robbery. 3 days back. 2 passengers killed, another wounded. One passenger, a young woman, disappeared. We thought she might have been taken or killed and dragged off, but there was no body. Clara had been inside, but she emerged now, drawn by the sound of voices. The sheriff's eyes widened slightly. "Madam, were you on that stage?" Clara looked to Gabriel, uncertainty written across her features. He gave a slight nod. She would have to face this sometime. "I do not know," Clara said honestly. "I have no memory of anything before Gabriel found me in the canyon. I was injured and my memory is gone." The sheriff dismounted and approached carefully. "May I see the injury?" Clara showed him the now healing wound on her temple. The sheriff examined it with the careful attention of a man who had seen many injuries in his time. "That is consistent with a hard blow. You are lucky to be alive, Miss Clara Foster," she said. "That is what I am calling myself now." The sheriff glanced at Gabriel with raised eyebrows. "Foster, you sure about that name?" "As sure as I can be about anything," Clara replied. "I want to start over. Whatever happened before, whoever I was, it feels like that person died in that canyon. I want to be someone new." Sheriff Morrison scratched his jaw thoughtfully. "Well, that is an unusual situation. The thing is, miss, if you were on that stage, we need to notify your family. There was a manifest. Let me describe the missing woman. She was traveling from Sacramento, early 20s, auburn hair, green eyes, wearing a blue dress. Name of Catherine Fairchild, daughter of a banker." Clara's expression remained blank. "I am sorry. None of that sounds familiar." "Catherine Fairchild was engaged to be married," the sheriff continued, watching her carefully, "to a man in Virginia City. Rich fellow, much older. The wedding was supposed to be next month." Something flickered across Clara's face, too quick for Gabriel to read, but then it was gone. "I am sorry," she repeated. "I just do not remember," the sheriff sighed. "I will have to report that you are alive at least. Your family will be worried sick." "If I am this Catherine Fairchild," Clara said slowly, "and if I was traveling to marry a man I do not remember, perhaps losing my memory is a blessing. Perhaps Clara Foster will be happier than Catherine Fairchild ever was." Gabriel watched the exchange with interest. He had not considered that Clara might be running from something even before the injury. The thought of her being engaged to another man created an odd tightness in his chest that he chose not to examine too closely. "I cannot force you to reclaim your identity," the sheriff said finally. "But I have to tell them you are alive. They have a right to know. Tell them Clara Foster survived and has no memory of her past life," Clara said firmly. "Tell them she wishes them well but intends to make a new life for herself." After the sheriff left, Gabriel and Clara stood in the yard, the dust from his departure still settling. Gabriel should have said something, should have asked if she truly remembered nothing or if she was choosing to forget. But it was not his nature to pry, and he understood better than most the desire to leave the past buried. "You think I am terrible," Clara said quietly, "running away from a family that probably loves me." "I think you are doing what you need to do to survive," Gabriel replied. "That is all any of us can do." She turned to face him fully. "What if I am engaged? What if there is a man waiting for me who loves me? If you were traveling to Virginia City to marry a rich older fellow, does it sound like love to you? Or does it sound like an arrangement?" Clara looked down at her hands. "I do not know, but I feel it in here." She pressed a hand to her chest. "I feel that whatever I was going toward, I did not want it. Maybe the bandits did me a favor." "2 people died in that robbery," Gabriel reminded her gently. "I know, and I am sorry for that. But I cannot change it. I can only decide what to do now in this moment. And what I want is to stay here, to be Clara Foster, to start over completely." Gabriel knew he should send her back. The proper thing would be to put her on a stage to Sacramento. Let her family nurse her back to health. Let her fiancé or husband to be decide her fate. But he had never been much for doing what was proper when it did not sit right in his gut. "You can stay as long as you need," he heard himself say, "but people will talk. Small town like Oroville, they notice things. Then we should get married." The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Gabriel stared at her, convinced he had misheard. "What?" Clara's cheeks flushed, but her gaze remained steady. "If I am staying here, if I am building a new life, I need it to be legitimate. You are a good man, Gabriel Irving. You saved my life. You have asked nothing of me. You sleep in the barn so my reputation stays intact. But we both know that cannot last forever." She took a breath. "Marry me. Not for love, not yet, but for practicality. We can be partners in this new life I am trying to build." Gabriel's first instinct was to refuse. Marriage was not something to be entered into lightly, and they barely knew each other. But as he looked at Clara, seeing the determination in her eyes and the set of her jaw, he realized she was offering him something he had not expected to want. A companion. Someone to fill the silence that had grown so comfortable he had forgotten how heavy it was. "You are asking a lot," he said finally. "I am. And I am offering a lot too. I can help with the ranch. I can cook and clean and mend. I can be a true partner. And maybe in time we will find that we chose well. Or maybe we will just be two people who help each other survive. Either way, it is better than being alone." Gabriel thought about his empty house, his solitary meals, his days that passed with barely a word spoken aloud. He thought about Clara's determination to start fresh, her courage in the face of complete uncertainty. He thought about how, in just a few days, his home had felt less like a place he existed and more like a place he lived. "All right," he said. "We will get married." Clara's smile broke across her face like sunrise, and Gabriel felt that shift in his chest again, stronger this time. Maybe this was madness. Maybe they would regret it. But as they stood in the fading light, the decision felt right in a way few things in Gabriel's life ever had. They married 3 days later in a simple ceremony at the church in Oroville. The preacher, Reverend Matthews, was a kind man who asked few questions when Gabriel and Clara appeared requesting marriage. If he found it odd that the silent cowboy was suddenly taking a bride, or that the bride had appeared from nowhere with no family in attendance, he kept his thoughts to himself. Clara wore a simple dress they had purchased from the general store, pale yellow cotton with tiny white flowers. Gabriel wore his cleanest shirt and had even trimmed his beard. They stood before the reverend with the afternoon sun streaming through the modest church windows, and Gabriel tried to remember the last time he had been inside these walls. His parents' funeral, he realized. 5 years ago. "Do you, Gabriel Irving, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" Gabriel looked at Clara, at the hope and nervousness warring in her eyes. "I do." "And do you, Clara Foster, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do." Her voice was clear and steady. "Then by the power vested in me by the state of California, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Gabriel had not thought this part through. He leaned forward carefully and pressed his lips to Clara's in a kiss that was brief and chaste, more promise than passion. But even that simple contact sent warmth through him that he had not felt in longer than he could remember. They walked out of the church as husband and wife, and Gabriel helped Clara into the wagon for the ride back to the ranch. Their ranch now, he supposed. The thought was still settling in his mind when Clara spoke. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for giving me this chance." "You are the one taking the bigger risk," Gabriel replied. "You do not know me. I know enough. I know you are kind and decent. I know you keep your word. I know you have not pushed me or demanded anything from me. That is more than many women get in a marriage." Gabriel thought about the engagement she had left behind, the older rich man in Virginia City. "Did you remember something? About before?" Clara was quiet for a long moment. "Not exactly. But when the sheriff described that life, going to marry someone for money or position, it felt wrong. Like putting on a dress that does not fit. Even without memories, something in me rejected it. And does this feel right?" She turned to look at him, and her smile was soft and genuine. "It feels like possibility. Like I get to choose who I become instead of being told." They fell into a rhythm over the following weeks, learning the shape of married life together. Gabriel moved his things back into the house, and they shared the space with an awkwardness that gradually eased into comfort. Clara transformed the bare cabin into something that felt like a home. She planted herbs in a small garden, hung curtains in the windows, and filled the evenings with quiet conversation that Gabriel found himself looking forward to. He taught her about the ranch, showing her how to tend the chickens and collect eggs, how to milk the cow, how to mend fence. She learned quickly, her body remembering skills even when her mind did not. In return, she brought warmth to his existence that had been missing for so long. "Tell me about your family," Clara asked one evening as they sat on the porch after supper. It had become their habit, watching the sun set and letting the day settle into night. Gabriel was quiet for so long she probably thought he would not answer. Finally, he said, "Had a brother. Samuel. He died at Gettysburg in '63, was 2 years younger than me. Should have been me that went, but he was always the brave one, always ready to charge ahead. Ma and Pa never got over losing him. They held on until '73, but the fever that winter took them both within days of each other. Think they were ready to go, if I am honest. Tired of hurting." "And you have been alone since then?" "Mostly. Came out to California, started the ranch, kept busy. Keeping busy helps." Clara reached over and took his hand. It was the first time she had initiated contact beyond the necessities of daily life, and Gabriel's fingers closed around hers automatically. Her hand was small and warm in his. "You do not have to be alone anymore," she said softly. Gabriel looked at their joined hands, at the simple gold band on her finger that marked her as his wife. "Neither do you." They sat like that until the stars emerged, hand in hand, not needing words. Gabriel realized that Clara had been right about the silence. It was better when shared with someone. The first real test of their marriage came 6 weeks after the wedding. Gabriel had ridden into town for supplies, leaving Clara at the ranch. When he returned, he found her standing in the yard staring at a fine carriage that looked distinctly out of place among the dust and sagebrush. A man in an expensive suit stood beside it, his expression a mix of impatience and something darker. Gabriel pulled the wagon up and climbed down slowly, his eyes never leaving the stranger. The man was perhaps 45, with silver threading through his dark hair and the kind of bearing that spoke of money and authority. "Can I help you?" Gabriel asked, his voice carrying the hard edge it took on when he felt threatened. "You must be the cowboy who married my fiancée," the man said. His tone was cultured, educated, and dripping with disdain. "I am Harrison Montgomery from Virginia City. I have come to collect what is mine." Gabriel's jaw tightened. "Nothing here belongs to you. Catherine does." Montgomery turned his gaze to Clara, who stood frozen on the porch. "Catherine Fairchild, my betrothed. Her father and I had an arrangement. My name is Clara Irving," she said, her voice shaking but determined. And I am married to Gabriel. Whatever arrangement you had with whoever you think I was, it died in that canyon." Montgomery's expression hardened. "You cannot simply abandon your obligations, Catherine. Your father paid substantial debts with the promise of this marriage. You will dishonor him and ruin your family if you do not fulfill your duty." "I do not remember him," Clara said, but Gabriel heard the uncertainty creeping into her voice. "I do not remember any of them." "Convenient." Montgomery's lip curled. "How very convenient that you lose your memory just as you are meant to marry me. Do you think I am a fool? Do you think I do not see this charade for what it is?" Gabriel stepped forward, positioning himself between Montgomery and Clara. "She is my wife, legal and proper. Whatever claim you think you have, it ended when she said her vows to me." "A marriage entered into under false pretenses," Montgomery countered. "She is not Clara Foster. She is Catherine Fairchild, and her family wants her back. I could have this marriage annulled before sunset. Try it." Gabriel's voice was quiet, but the threat in it was unmistakable. "You will find I am not easy to move when I decide to stand my ground." Montgomery studied Gabriel with calculating eyes. "Her father is a powerful man, Cowboy. He has connections. He could make your life very difficult. Let him try." For a long moment, the two men stared at each other, wills locked. Then Clara stepped forward, moving past Gabriel to face Montgomery directly. "Did you love me?" she asked. "When we were engaged, did you love Catherine Fairchild?" Montgomery seemed taken aback by the question. "Love is a luxury, my dear. Marriage is a contract. Your father needed financial assistance. I needed a wife of good breeding. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement." "And what did Catherine need? Security, position, everything a woman could want." Clara shook her head slowly. "I do not believe that. I think Catherine needed what every person needs, to be seen, to be valued, to choose her own path." She straightened her shoulders. "I am sorry for whatever difficulties my disappearance causes my family. If there are debts, perhaps they can be settled another way. But I will not go with you. I will not honor an engagement I do not remember to a man who speaks of marriage as a business transaction." "You will regret this," Montgomery said coldly. "Both of you. I will see to it." He climbed back into his carriage and signaled the driver. As they rolled away, leaving dust in their wake, Gabriel felt Clara begin to shake. He turned and pulled her into his arms, feeling her tears soak into his shirt. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I have brought trouble to your door." "Our door," Gabriel corrected, "and we will face it together." But even as he held her, Gabriel felt the weight of what they were up against. A rich man with connections was a dangerous enemy. He could make legal trouble, financial trouble, even physical trouble if he was inclined. Gabriel had wanted a quiet life, but it seemed that was no longer possible. That night, as they lay in bed with careful space between them as had been their custom, Clara spoke into the darkness. "Gabriel, are you awake?" "Yes. I think I remember something. Not much. Just feelings, impressions. I think my father did arrange the marriage. I think I tried to refuse, but he was desperate. There were gambling debts, I think. He needed Montgomery's money." She paused. "I think I was running away. I think I asked the stage driver to take a different route to help me disappear. And then the bandits came and everything went wrong." Gabriel absorbed this. "So you were running even before you lost your memory?" "Yes, and then the injury made it easier, gave me an excuse." She turned toward him, and he could feel her gaze even in the darkness. "But marrying you, that was not part of any plan. That was real. You are real. This life we are building, it is the first thing that has felt true in longer than I can remember." Gabriel rolled onto his side to face her. "If you remember more, if your memory comes back fully, will you regret this choice?" "No." She did not hesitate. Whatever Catherine Fairchild's life was, Clara Irving's life is better." He reached out, finding her hand in the darkness, lacing his fingers with hers. "Then we will figure out the rest as it comes." Over the next weeks, Gabriel watched Clara carefully, looking for signs that her memory was returning. She had moments of recognition, fragments of knowledge that seemed to surface unexpectedly. She knew how to play piano, though Gabriel did not own one. She spoke French, though she could not remember learning it. She knew the steps to formal dances, the etiquette of fancy dinners, things that spoke of a privileged upbringing. But she did not seem unhappy with the simpler life they led. She threw herself into ranch work with enthusiasm, learning to handle the horses, helping Gabriel repair the barn roof, getting dirt under her fingernails and sun on her face. She laughed more as the days passed, and Gabriel found himself laughing with her, rediscovering a part of himself he had thought lost. "I think I was lonely before," Clara told him one day as they worked together to break a young mare to saddle. "Even with family, with a life full of people and parties and obligations, I think I was lonelier than you were in your silence." Gabriel understood that. He had learned the difference between solitude and loneliness. One was a choice, the other a prison. The mare danced under Clara's gentle hands, and Gabriel watched his wife with growing admiration. She was stronger than she looked, braver than she probably realized. Whatever life had shaped her before, it had given her resilience. "You are good with her," Gabriel observed. Clara smiled, reaching up to stroke the mare's neck. "She is scared. She does not understand that we are trying to help her, not hurt her. She just needs patience." "Sounds familiar." She laughed at that, understanding the comparison. "Are you calling me a frightened horse, Gabriel Irving?" "Maybe. Or maybe I am the frightened horse and you are the one with the patience." The mare settled under Clara's touch, and Gabriel moved closer to help adjust the saddle. He was acutely aware of Clara's proximity, the warmth of her body, the scent of her hair. They had been married for 2 months now, sharing a home and a life, but they had maintained a careful physical distance beyond the occasional hand holding and the chaste kiss on their wedding day. Gabriel was not sure what he was waiting for. Permission, perhaps. A sign that Clara wanted more than the practical partnership they had agreed to. He found himself wanting to touch her more often, to close the distance between them, but fear held him back. Fear that she would reject him, or worse, agree out of obligation rather than desire. "Gabriel." Clara's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Yes, the horse is ready. You can let go of the saddle now." He realized he had been standing frozen, his hands on the saddle, lost in his own head. He stepped back, feeling heat rise in his face. Clara was watching him with an expression he could not quite read. "I should check the fence line," Gabriel said, needing space to clear his thoughts. That north section was looking weak. "I will start supper," Clara said, but there was a knowing quality to her smile that suggested she understood more than he had said. As Gabriel rode out to inspect the fence, he forced himself to confront the truth he had been avoiding. He was falling in love with his wife. This marriage that had started as a practical arrangement, a solution to an impossible situation, had become something real. Clara had worked her way into his heart with her determination, her laughter, her quiet strength in the face of uncertainty. But did she feel the same? Or was he just a convenient refuge, a safe harbor in a storm? Gabriel had no experience with love, no framework for understanding the emotions that churned in his chest. He only knew that the thought of losing Clara, of having her memory return and choose to go back to her old life, filled him with a dread deeper than any he had known. That evening, as they ate the stew Clara had prepared, she seemed unusually quiet. Gabriel was about to ask if something was wrong when she spoke first. "There was a letter today, from Sacramento, The postmaster brought it out since he was passing this way. Gabriel's stomach tightened. From your family, from my father, Richard Fairchild. She pushed the envelope across the table. I have not opened it yet. I wanted to wait for you. Gabriel picked up the envelope, noting the expensive paper and precise handwriting. Do you want to read it? I think I have to. He handed it back, and Clara broke the seal with trembling fingers. She unfolded the letter and read silently, her expression shifting from apprehension to sorrow to something that might have been relief. When she finished, she passed it to Gabriel. The letter was not long. Richard Fairchild wrote that he was glad she was safe, that he had been frantic with worry. He acknowledged that the engagement to Montgomery had been his doing, motivated by debts he could not otherwise pay. He wrote that he understood if she could not forgive him, but he hoped she would at least write back, let him know she was truly all right. He did not demand she return. He did not threaten. He simply sounded like a father who had made mistakes and was trying to make amends. He sounds sorry, Gabriel said. He does. Clara's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I remember him now. Not everything, but enough. I remember his face, his voice. I remember that he loved me, even when he made bad choices. She wiped at her eyes. I should write back. Let him know I am well. Let him know I have made my choice and I am happy. Are you happy? Clara looked at him with those green eyes that had haunted his thoughts since the day he found her in the canyon. Yes, happier than I have ever been, I think. Even with the uncertainty, even with the fear of Montgomery making trouble. Because this life is mine. I chose it. I chose you. Gabriel felt something give way inside him, a wall he had built carefully over years of solitude crumbling. He reached across the table and took both her hands in his. I was afraid to ask what you felt, afraid the answer would be that you were just making the best of a bad situation. Is that what you thought? Clara's voice was soft. Gabriel, you saved my life. You gave me a home. You have been patient and kind and asked nothing of me. How could I not come to care for you? Care is not the same as love. No, it is not. She squeezed his hands. But what I feel for you, it is more than care. It has been growing since that first day. Every time you show me something new about the ranch, every time you laugh at something I say, every time I catch you watching me with that expression you think I do not notice. It all adds up to something that feels very much like love. Gabriel stood, pulling her up with him, and then he was kissing her, really kissing her for the first time. Not a chaste press of lips, but something deeper, more genuine. Clara melted into him, her arms going around his neck, and Gabriel felt the last of his reservations fall away. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Clara laughed. I was beginning to think you would never do that. I am not good with words, Gabriel said. Takes me time to work up to things. Then it is fortunate I am patient. She kissed him again, softer this time. Take me to bed, Gabriel, not to sleep in careful distance, but as your wife in truth. They made love that night with tenderness and passion, discovering each other in the lamplight. Clara was both bold and shy, and Gabriel tried to be gentle even as desire threatened to overwhelm him. Afterwards, as they lay tangled together in the sheets, Gabriel felt a completeness he had never known. I love you, he said into the darkness, the words coming easier than he expected. I think I have since I found you in that canyon, looking lost and brave all at once. I love you too, Clara whispered back. My silent cowboy who gave me a voice. They fell asleep in each other's arms, and for the first time in years, Gabriel's dreams were not of loss but of possibility. The happiness they found in each other's arms carried them through the following months. Winter came to the foothills of California, bringing cold rains that turned the ground to mud and kept them inside more than Gabriel preferred. But being confined to the house was less a hardship than a gift when it meant long evenings by the fire. Clara reading aloud from books while Gabriel worked on tack repairs, both of them stealing glances and smiles across the room. Clara wrote to her father, a carefully worded letter that acknowledged their shared past while firmly establishing her new identity. She explained that while she held no ill will, she would not be returning to Sacramento. She was Clara Irving now, wife to a rancher, and she was content. Richard Fairchild's response came 3 weeks later, shorter but warmer, wishing her well and asking permission to visit in the spring. Clara cried when she read it, but they were tears of relief rather than sorrow. Montgomery did not make good on his threats immediately, which Gabriel took as either a good sign or a worrying one. Men like that did not forget slights, but perhaps he had decided the fight was not worth the effort. Gabriel hoped so, but he kept his rifle cleaned and ready, just in case. In February, Clara realized she was pregnant. She told Gabriel one morning over breakfast, her hands wrapped around her coffee cup, nervousness and joy warring on her face. "I am fairly certain," she said. "All the signs are there. I think the baby will come in early autumn." Gabriel felt his throat tighten with emotion. A child. He was going to be a father. The thought terrified and thrilled him in equal measure. "How do you feel about it?" he asked, scared, Clara admitted. "But happy. So happy, Gabriel. I did not think I would have this. A family of my own, built on love rather than obligation." He went to her, kneeling beside her chair and placing his hand over hers on her still flat belly. "We will figure it out together, like we figure out everything else. I know." She smiled down at him. "You are going to be an excellent father." "How do you know?" "Because you are patient and kind and steady. Because you care deeply even when you do not show it. Our child will be lucky to have you." Gabriel rested his head against her stomach, overwhelmed by the weight of responsibility and love. He had spent so long thinking of himself as alone, but now he had a wife and a child on the way. He had a future that looked nothing like the empty years he had resigned himself to. As winter gave way to spring, Clara bloomed along with the wildflowers. Her belly swelled, and Gabriel found himself constantly amazed by the changes in her body, the visible proof of the life they had created. He became fiercely protective, insisting she not overdo the ranch work, though Clara laughingly ignored most of his concerns. "I am pregnant, not fragile," she reminded him regularly. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time." "Not my baby," Gabriel countered. "Not my wife." In April, true to his word, Richard Fairchild came to visit. He arrived in a modest carriage, looking older and more worn than the photograph Clara had shown Gabriel from her recovered memories. Father and daughter stood awkwardly in the yard for a moment before Clara stepped forward and embraced him. "I am sorry," Richard said, his voice cracking. "For all of it. For the debt, for the engagement, for putting you in a position where you felt you had to run." "It led me here," Clara said simply. "To Gabriel, to this life. I cannot regret that." Richard stayed for 3 days, and Gabriel watched father and daughter carefully rebuild their relationship. Richard was educated and refined, clearly from a different world than Gabriel's, but he treated Gabriel with respect and seemed genuinely interested in the ranch. By the time he left, there was an understanding between them that felt solid. "You take care of my daughter," Richard said to Gabriel as he prepared to depart. "She says she is happy, but I will hold you to making sure she stays that way." "I will," Gabriel promised. "She is my whole world." Richard nodded, satisfied, and then he was gone, leaving Gabriel and Clara to settle back into their routine. But something had shifted. Clara seemed more grounded, more at peace with who she had been and who she had become. The last shadows of uncertainty lifted, and she fully embraced her life as Clara Irving. Summer brought heat and hard work. Gabriel hired a ranch hand named Tom to help with the expanding operation. The ranch was doing well enough that Gabriel could afford the help, and with the baby coming, he wanted to make sure Clara would not be burdened with too much physical labor. Tom was a young man, barely 20, who had come west looking for opportunity. He was a hard worker and kept to himself, which suited Gabriel fine. He built Tom a small cabin near the barn, and the young man became a steady presence on the property. In August, on a day when the heat shimmered off the ground and even the lizards sought shade, Clara went into labor. Gabriel, who had faced down armed men without flinching, found himself terrified by his wife's pain. He sent Tom racing to town for the doctor and the midwife, Mrs. Patterson, while he stayed with Clara. "I am all right," Clara assured him between contractions, though her face was pale and sweat soaked her hair. "This is normal. This is how it is supposed to be." "I do not like seeing you hurt," Gabriel said helplessly. "Then perhaps you should have thought of that before getting me with child," Clara joked, then gasped as another contraction hit. The midwife arrived first, a capable woman in her 60s who had delivered more babies than Gabriel could count. She shooed him out of the bedroom with firm kindness. "Boil water. Find clean towels. Make yourself useful, Mr. Irving." Gabriel paced the main room, following the midwife's instructions mechanically while his mind stayed focused on the bedroom and the sounds coming from within. Clara's cries of pain cut through him like knives. Time stretched and compressed strangely. It felt like hours and moments all at once. Then, as the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds, a new sound cut through the house. A baby's cry, strong and indignant. Gabriel froze, his heart pounding. Mrs. Patterson emerged from the bedroom, a smile on her face. "You have a son, Mr. Irving. A healthy, beautiful boy. Mother and baby are both doing well." Gabriel barely heard the rest. He stumbled toward the bedroom, where Clara lay propped against pillows, her hair plastered to her forehead, looking exhausted and more radiant than he had ever seen her. In her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in a blanket. "Come meet your son," Clara said softly. Gabriel approached slowly, almost afraid. When he looked down at the baby, at the small red face and the tiny fists waving in the air, something inside him broke open completely. He had not cried since his parents died, but tears spilled down his face now as he looked at his child. "He is perfect," Gabriel managed to say. "He is ours," Clara corrected. "Sit with us." Gabriel carefully settled on the edge of the bed and Clara placed the baby in his arms. The weight was so light, the life so fragile, and Gabriel made a silent promise to this tiny person that he would do everything in his power to keep him safe and loved. "What should we name him?" Clara asked. Gabriel looked at his son, then at his wife. "Samuel," he said, "after my brother." "If that is all right with you." Clara's smile was brilliant. "Samuel Irving. It is perfect." They sat together as the light faded, a new family, complete and whole in ways Gabriel had never imagined possible. The life he had built in solitude had become a life filled with love, and he knew with absolute certainty that everything had changed for the better. The first months with Samuel were both exhausting and exhilarating. Gabriel discovered depths of tenderness he had not known he possessed, rocking his son to sleep in the middle of the night, singing quiet songs he barely remembered from his own childhood. Clara took to motherhood with the same determination she brought to everything else, though Gabriel could see the toll the sleepless nights took on her. They worked together as they always had, sharing the burden and the joy. Gabriel found himself talking more, narrating his days to Samuel even though the baby could not understand. Clara teased him about it gently. "The silent cowboy has found his voice." she said one morning as Gabriel carried Samuel around the house, explaining the various tools and their purposes. He should know about these things, Gabriel said defensively. Need to start his education early. He is 3 months old. Never too early. Clara laughed, and the sound filled the house like music. Gabriel realized that laughter had become commonplace in their home. Where once there had been only silence, now there was crying and cooing and laughter and conversation. It was chaotic and wonderful, and Gabriel would not trade it for anything. In December, as Samuel approached 4 months old, trouble arrived in the form of 2 men on horseback. Gabriel was working in the barn when Tom came running. "Mr. Irving, there are men at the house, rough-looking types. Mrs. Irving is inside with the baby." Gabriel grabbed his rifle and ran. As he rounded the corner of the barn, he saw the 2 men on the porch. They had not dismounted, which Gabriel took as a small mercy. Clara stood in the doorway, Samuel in her arms, her chin raised defiantly. "Can I help you?" Gabriel asked, his voice hard. One of the men, a lanky fellow with a scar across his cheek, grinned unpleasantly. "Mr. Montgomery sends his regards. Seems he has not forgotten about the debt owed him." "There is no debt," Gabriel said. "Clara is my wife, legal and proper." "Maybe so," the second man said. He was shorter but broader with mean eyes. "But Mr. Montgomery, he is a man who likes to get what he pays for. He paid your father-in-law's debts, Mrs. Irving. That means you owe him." "I owe him nothing," Clara said firmly. "That arrangement was made without my consent." "Montgomery does not see it that way," Scarface said. "He sent us to deliver a message. You have a choice. Come back with us to Virginia City, or he will make life very difficult for you and your cowboy husband." Gabriel leveled the rifle at them. "You have delivered your message. Now get off my property." "Threatening us will not help," the broad man said. "We are just messengers, but Montgomery, he has resources. He can make problems for you, legal problems, financial problems. Maybe your ranch gets investigated for livestock theft. Maybe the bank suddenly calls in loans. Maybe accidents happen." "Is that a threat?" Gabriel asked quietly. "It is a promise. Montgomery always gets what he wants one way or another." Gabriel fired the rifle into the air, the crack of the shot sending both horses dancing nervously. "Next one goes lower. Get out of here before I forget myself." The men exchanged glances, then turned their horses. "You are making a mistake," Scarface called back. "Montgomery will not let this go." They rode off, and Gabriel lowered the rifle, his hands shaking with suppressed rage. Clara came down from the porch, still holding Samuel close. "What are we going to do?" "We are going to fight," Gabriel said. "He wants to make trouble, let him try. We have done nothing wrong. You chose your own path. That is your right." But over the next weeks, Montgomery made good on his threats. The sheriff received an anonymous tip about stolen cattle and had to come investigate Gabriel's herd. Nothing came of it because the cattle were all legally purchased and marked, but the investigation was humiliating and time-consuming. Then the bank in Oroville, which held the note on Gabriel's ranch, suddenly became difficult, demanding earlier payment than originally agreed upon. Gabriel managed to meet the demand by selling some of his best horses, but it hurt. Most troubling were the accidents. A fence mysteriously cut, letting cattle wander. A fire in the hay barn that Tom caught early enough to prevent major damage but which could have been devastating. Gabriel could not prove Montgomery was behind it, but he knew. "This has to stop," Clara said one evening after they had spent hours rounding up scattered cattle. "He is going to ruin us." "What do you suggest?" Gabriel asked, exhausted and frustrated. "We cannot give in. If we let Montgomery win, we lose everything. Maybe I should go talk to him." "Face to face. Make him understand that I will never come back, that harassing us is pointless. Absolutely not. I will not put you in danger. Then what, Gabriel? We just endure this until he destroys everything we have built. Gabriel had no answer. He felt helpless in a way he hated, unable to protect his family from an enemy who operated in shadows and used the law as a weapon. They needed help, but Gabriel had always been self-reliant. Asking for help did not come naturally. It was Clara who suggested contacting her father. He knows men like Montgomery. He lived in that world. Maybe he knows how to fight back. Gabriel resisted at first, hating the idea of running to anyone for aid. But as another week passed and more incidents occurred, a mysterious illness in some of the cattle, supplies that went missing, he realized pride was a luxury they could not afford. Richard Fairchild arrived within a week of Clara's telegram. He listened to their story with a grim expression, then nodded. I suspected Montgomery might cause trouble. Men like him do not like losing, but I know him, and I know his weaknesses. What weaknesses? Gabriel asked. Montgomery's wealth comes from investments, many of which are questionable. He has business partners who would be very interested to know about certain dealings. He also has political aspirations, which means he cannot afford scandal. Richard smiled thinly. I may have made mistakes with gambling, but I still have connections. I still know where the bodies are buried, metaphorically speaking. Over the next days, Richard worked his connections. He sent telegrams, called in favors, reached out to old business associates. Gabriel did not know all the details, but he saw the results. The harassment stopped abruptly. Then word came through Sheriff Morrison that Montgomery was facing legal troubles of his own, investigations into his business practices that would keep him occupied for quite some time. He will not bother you again, Richard said with satisfaction. I made sure he understands that if he does, I will bury him. I may not have money anymore, but I have information, and that is more valuable. Gabriel shook Richard's hand gratefully. Thank you. I know we have not given you much reason to help. You made my daughter happy, Richard said simply. You gave her the life she wanted. That is all the reason I need. After Richard left, Clara threw her arms around Gabriel. It is over. We are finally free. Gabriel held her tight, Samuel squirming between them. We are free. The years that followed were peaceful in a way Gabriel had never expected. The ranch prospered, growing from a modest operation to one of the more successful in the region. Gabriel hired more hands and began breeding horses specifically for sale to the cavalry, a lucrative venture. Clara proved to have a head for business, managing the books and contracts with skill that suggested her privileged upbringing had included practical education alongside the fancy finishing. Samuel grew into a sturdy, curious boy with his mother's green eyes and his father's quiet nature. He toddled after Gabriel around the ranch, mimicking his father's every move. Gabriel taught him to ride almost as soon as he could walk, sitting him on the gentlest mare and leading them around the corral while Clara watched with a mixture of pride and terror. When Samuel was 3, Clara became pregnant again. This time there was no fear, only anticipation. They knew what to expect, and Gabriel was determined to be calmer about the whole process. Clara laughed at his preparations, the way he made sure everything was ready weeks before it was needed. You are going to wear yourself out with worry, she told him. Cannot help it. Last time nearly killed me listening to you in pain. The reward was worth it though, was it not? Gabriel looked at Samuel, who was playing with wooden horses Gabriel had carved, narrating an elaborate story only he understood. Yes, worth every moment. Their second child arrived in late spring, another boy they named Daniel. He was smaller than Samuel had been, but just as healthy, with a full head of dark hair and his father's serious expression. Samuel was fascinated by his baby brother, wanting to help with everything, though his help often created more work than it saved. Gabriel found himself living a life he had never imagined. His house was loud and chaotic, full of children and laughter and love. Clara had transformed from the frightened woman with no memory into a confident wife and mother, the heart of their home. Gabriel still was not much for words, but he no longer needed to be. His family understood him, knew the depths of his feelings even when he could not articulate them. On warm evenings, Gabriel and Clara would sit on the porch as they had from the beginning, watching the sun set while their boys played in the yard. These were Gabriel's favorite moments, when the day's work was done and the future stretched out before them full of promise. "Do you ever think about what might have been?" Clara asked one such evening. "If I had not lost my memory, if I had gone on to Virginia City?" "Sometimes," Gabriel admitted, "but only to be grateful it did not happen. I think I would have run eventually, memory or not. That life was never going to fit me. And this one does." Clara looked at him with such love that Gabriel felt his chest tighten. "This one is perfect, exactly what I needed even though I did not know it." "I love you," Gabriel said. The words came easier now after years of practice. "I loved you from the moment I found you in that canyon, and I love you more every day. I love you too, my silent cowboy, though you are not so silent anymore." That was true. Gabriel talked more now, drawn out by his family's constant presence. He told his son stories of his own childhood, of his brother Samuel and the adventures they had. He talked to Clara about everything and nothing, sharing thoughts and dreams he once would have kept locked away. She had taught him that silence was sometimes necessary, but sharing yourself with people you loved was necessary too. As the years passed, Gabriel and Clara's ranch became a fixture in the Oroville community. They were known as hard workers, fair employers, and loving parents. Samuel and Daniel grew into fine boys, learning the ranching life from their father and the value of education from their mother, who taught them reading and writing at the kitchen table every morning. When Samuel was 8 and Daniel was 5, Clara became pregnant once more. This time, she gave birth to a daughter they named Rose. She was tiny and perfect, with auburn hair like her mother and a temperament that suggested she would be fierce. Gabriel, who had thought his heart could not expand any further, found new depths of love for his little girl. Rose wrapped her father around her finger from the start. Gabriel, who had been steady and firm with his sons, melted before his daughter's smiles. Clara teased him about it constantly. "You are going to spoil her," she said, watching Gabriel rock Rose to sleep, singing softly. "She deserves to be spoiled. Your sons might disagree. They had their turn." Gabriel smiled down at Rose's peaceful face. "Besides, they have each other. She needs her father to look after her." Samuel and Daniel adored their baby sister, competing to make her laugh and rushing to tell their mother when she needed anything. The house was louder than ever, but Gabriel found he loved the noise. It meant life, family, connection. All the things he had thought lost to him forever. One autumn evening, when Rose was 2 and the boys were busy with their chores, Gabriel found Clara standing at the fence, looking out over the land they had built their life on. He came up beside her, wrapping an arm around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How lucky I am," Clara said. "I lost everything in that canyon, my memory, my identity, my past, and somehow that led me to everything I ever truly needed. You think losing your memory was lucky. I think it was fate, or providence, or just remarkable chance. But yes, in a way, losing Catherine Fairchild allowed me to find Clara Irving, and Clara Irving is happier than Catherine Fairchild ever would have been." Gabriel pulled her closer. "I found you in that canyon, But I think you found me too. Pulled me out of my silence, made me part of the world again. We found each other, Clara amended. She turned to face him fully. Thank you, Gabriel, for taking a chance on a woman with no name and no past, for building this life with me, for loving me. Loving you is easy, Gabriel said. Easiest thing I have ever done. They stood together as the sun set, watching their children play, feeling the weight of their shared history and the promise of their shared future. Gabriel thought back to the day he had heard that gunshot, the day he had found Clara stumbling through the sagebrush. He had been tracking an elk, following the solitary path he had chosen for himself. But fate had other plans, and he was grateful for it. Life continued its steady rhythm. The ranch grew and prospered. Samuel showed a talent for breaking horses, patient and gentle like his father. Daniel had his mother's head for numbers and began helping with the business side of things even in his youth. Rose proved to be a handful, wild and free-spirited, constantly getting into mischief that somehow always ended with Gabriel laughing and shaking his head. Richard Fairchild became a regular visitor, spending weeks at a time at the ranch, delighting in his grandchildren. He had given up gambling entirely after nearly losing his daughter and seemed content to live a quieter life, making amends for past mistakes by being the best grandfather he could be. When Samuel turned 15, Gabriel gave him his first real responsibility, putting him in charge of a small herd of horses to break and train for sale. Samuel took to the work with pride and skill, proving he had inherited the best of both his parents. Daniel, at 12, was already managing the ranch's books with Clara, showing a sharp mind for business. Rose, at 7, was still more interested in climbing trees and catching frogs than anything resembling work, but Gabriel could not bring himself to scold her for it. Let her be young and wild while she could. The world would demand enough of her soon enough. One day, when Gabriel was working in the corral with Samuel, his son asked him a question that made Gabriel pause. "Did you always want to be a rancher?" Gabriel considered the question carefully. "No. When I was young, I wanted to be a lot of things. But after the war, after losing family, I just wanted peace. The ranch gave me that. Do you regret it, not doing something else?" "Not for a minute." Gabriel looked at his son, nearly a man now. "This life, this ranch, your mother and you kids, it is everything I needed. Do not let anyone tell you that quiet work is not meaningful work. Building something with your own hands, caring for the land and the animals, raising a family in a good place, that is as important as any job in the world." Samuel nodded thoughtfully. "I think I want to stay, run the ranch after you, if that is all right." Gabriel felt pride swell in his chest. "It is more than all right, it is what I hoped for." They worked in comfortable silence, father and son, continuing the legacy Gabriel had built from loneliness and transformed into love. As the years accumulated, Gabriel found himself reflecting more on how drastically his life had changed. He was in his 40s now, his beard showing gray, his hands weathered from decades of work. Clara had lines at the corners of her eyes from years of laughter and sun, but to Gabriel, she was more beautiful than ever. Their 20th wedding anniversary arrived on a cool October day. The children, now grown and nearly grown, conspired to give their parents a day alone. Samuel, now 21 and fully capable of managing the ranch, took charge. Daniel, at 18, helped organize. Even Rose, at 12 and still occasionally wild, cooperated with the plan. Gabriel and Clara found themselves riding out to the canyon where they had first met, something they had not done in years. They rode in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from 2 decades of knowing each other completely. When they reached the spot where Gabriel had found Clara all those years ago, they dismounted and stood looking at the landscape. I tried to remember it exactly, Clara said. The moment before you appeared, what I was feeling, what I was thinking, but that person feels like a stranger now. Catherine Fairchild, running from a life she did not want, struck on the head and lost. Do you remember it all now? Everything from before? Most of it came back over the years. The childhood, the social obligations, the engagement I did not want. But it feels like something that happened to someone else. She turned to Gabriel. Clara Irving is who I really am. The woman I became with you is my true self. Gabriel took her hand, the same gesture that had comforted them both so many times over the years. I was half a person before you, going through motions, existing but not living. You changed everything. We changed each other. They stood together in the place where their story had begun, two people who had found each other through chance and choice, who had built a life from nothing and made it into everything. 20 years, Clara said wonderingly. It has gone so fast. And we have a lot more ahead of us. Gabriel pulled her close. I plan to grow old with you, Clara Irving, watching our children build their own lives, maybe grandchildren someday, all of it together. Together, Clara agreed, and kissed him with the same passion that had carried them through 2 decades of marriage. They rode back to the ranch as the sun set, and Gabriel felt a deep satisfaction settle over him. His life had not gone the way he expected. It had gone better. The silent cowboy who wanted nothing but solitude had found a bride with no name who wanted to start over, and together they had built something beautiful. The ranch house came into view, smoke curling from the chimney, lights in the windows. Their children had prepared a celebration, a simple dinner but made with love. As Gabriel and Clara dismounted and walked toward their home, Gabriel paused to take it all in. What is it? Clara asked. Just remembering, Gabriel said. That day I went tracking an elk and found you instead. Best day of my life, though I did not know it then. Mine too. Clara squeezed his hand. Everything I have, everything I am started that day. They went inside together, greeted by the noise and warmth of family. Samuel had prepared Gabriel's favorite meal with Daniel's help. Rose had picked wildflowers and arranged them on the table with haphazard charm. It was simple and perfect, exactly right. After dinner, as the children cleaned up despite their parents' protests, Gabriel and Clara sat on the porch as they always had. The stars were emerging in the darkening sky, and the cool October breeze carried the scent of dried grass and coming winter. Are you happy? Gabriel asked. It was a question he had asked before, but one that never got old. I am happier than I ever dreamed possible, Clara answered. You gave me a life worth living, Gabriel Irving. Every single day with you is a gift. You gave me back my voice, Gabriel said. My joy, my purpose. I would have lived and died alone if not for you. Well, thank goodness for that gunshot and my stubborn horse then, Clara said with a smile. And thank goodness for a silent cowboy who stopped to help a stranger. They sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped, watching the stars emerge one by one. Inside, they could hear their children laughing, the sound of home and family. Gabriel thought about the journey that had brought them here, all the twists of fate and choice that had led to this moment. He had been alone, content in his solitude, until the day he was not. Clara had been lost, desperate for a new beginning until she found one in his arms. Together, they had built a life neither could have imagined, full of love and laughter and purpose. The silent cowboy had found his voice. The bride with no name had found her identity. And together, they had found everything that mattered. As the years continued to unfold, the Irving family became an integral part of Oroville's history. Gabriel's careful management and Clara's business acumen meant the ranch thrived even as the wild frontier gradually gave way to more settled civilization. The railroads expanded, bringing more people west. The rough mining town Gabriel had first known became a proper community with schools and churches and regular law through it all. Gabriel and Clara remained constants. Their love never dimmed but grew richer with time, deepening into something that went beyond passion into true partnership. They faced challenges together, the occasional drought or hard winter, the normal struggles of raising children and running a business. But they faced everything as a team, never wavering in their commitment to each other and the life they had built. Samuel married at 24, bringing home a kind young woman named Elizabeth who fit into the family seamlessly. They built a house on the ranch property, near enough for family but with their own space. When Samuel and Elizabeth's first child was born, a boy they named Gabriel after his grandfather, Gabriel Irving held his grandson and felt the circle of life complete itself in a way that filled him with profound peace. Daniel chose a different path, using his business skills to open a general store in Oroville. He married a school teacher, a sharp woman named Martha who kept him on his toes. They had 2 daughters who visited the ranch often, keeping Rose company as she grew into her teenage years. Rose proved to be the wild card, rejecting traditional expectations to work alongside her father and Samuel with the horses. She had a gift for it, better even than Gabriel, able to gentle the most difficult animals. Gabriel worried about her unconventional path, until Clara reminded him that they, of all people, understood the importance of choosing your own way. As Gabriel moved into his 50s, he began to slow down, letting Samuel take on more of the day-to-day operations. But he still rose early every morning, still checked the horses, still found satisfaction in the physical work of the ranch. Clara teased him that he would never truly retire, and she was probably right. "You will have to pry me off this ranch," Gabriel said one morning as they shared coffee on the porch, a ritual they had maintained for nearly 30 years now. "I would not dream of trying," Clara assured him. "This is who you are, this land, this life. I knew that from the beginning." "And you never regretted it, giving up the comfortable life you could have had?" Clara gave him a look that was both amused and exasperated. "Gabriel Irving, we have been married for nearly 30 years. Do you really still doubt that I chose exactly what I wanted? I suppose not. I chose adventure and love and partnership. I chose sunrises on this porch and calluses on my hands and children who know how to work hard. I chose you every single day. I never looked back and I never will." Gabriel reached over and took her hand, marveling as he always did at how perfectly it fit in his. 3 decades together, and he still felt that spark of wonder that she was his, that they had found each other against all odds. The seasons continued their steady march. Samuel and Elizabeth gave Gabriel and Clara 3 more grandchildren. Daniel and Martha added 2 sons to their 2 daughters. Rose eventually married as well, to a horse trainer who worked for a ranch in the next valley. They stayed on the Irving Ranch, taking over a section of land to start their own herd. Rose's husband, James, was quiet like Gabriel, and the 2 men formed a comfortable partnership based on mutual respect and few words. As Gabriel approached 60, his hair now more gray than brown, he looked around at the empire he and Clara had built and felt deep satisfaction. The modest ranch he had started alone had become a thriving operation, but more importantly, it had become a family legacy. His children were building their own lives while staying connected to the land and each other. His grandchildren were growing up with the same values he had tried to instill in his own children: hard work, honesty, love of the land. Clara, now in her late 50s, had aged gracefully, her auburn hair streaked with silver but her green eyes as bright as ever. She still managed the business side of the ranch with skill, though she had trained Samuel and Daniel to handle much of it. She spent her time now on pursuits she enjoyed, a garden that had grown elaborate over the years, helping with the grandchildren, reading the books she loved. On their 35th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered at the main ranch house for a celebration. The house Gabriel had built for his solitary existence now overflowed with children and grandchildren, laughter and noise and life. Gabriel stood at the edge of the porch, watching the chaos with Clara beside him. "This is your legacy," Clara said softly. "Not just the ranch, though that is impressive, but this, family, love, connection. You built this, Gabriel." "We built it," Gabriel corrected. "I was nothing before you, just a man going through motions. And I was lost, literally and figuratively." Clara leaned into him. "But we found each other, and look what we created." Their oldest grandson, young Gabriel, now 15 and already showing signs of becoming a skilled rancher like his father and grandfather, approached them. "Grandpa, Grandma, Dad says it is time for the toast." They went inside, where Samuel stood with a glass raised. The room quieted as everyone turned to listen. "35 years ago," Samuel began, "my father found my mother in a canyon, lost and hurt. He brought her home and they built a life together. They built this ranch, this family. Everything we have, everything we are, comes from their love and their hard work." To Gabriel and Clara Irving, the best parents and grandparents anyone could ask for. To Gabriel and Clara. Everyone echoed, raising their glasses. Gabriel felt his throat tighten with emotion. He was not a man for speeches, never had been, but he tried to find words for what he felt. "I did not expect any of this," he said finally. "I thought I would live and die alone, and I was fine with that. But Clara came into my life and she changed everything. She gave me family. She gave me purpose. She gave me love I did not know I needed." He looked at Clara, seeing the tears in her eyes that matched his own. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me." "You are the best thing that ever happened to me too," Clara said. "I lost myself in that canyon. But I found something better. I found home." They kissed, and their family erupted in cheers and applause. The celebration continued late into the night with music and dancing and storytelling. Gabriel watched his grandchildren play, his children laugh, his wife shine in the center of it all. This was what life was meant to be. This connection, this love, this legacy. As the years advanced, Gabriel and Clara gradually stepped back from active management of the ranch, though they remained involved in decisions and day-to-day life. Samuel proved to be an excellent manager, combining Gabriel's work ethic with Clara's business sense. The ranch continued to prosper, adapting to changing times while maintaining its core values. Gabriel's health remained good into his 60s, though he moved slower and the California summers seemed hotter than they used to be. Clara developed arthritis in her hands but refused to let it stop her from her pursuits. They adapted as they always had, finding new ways to stay active and engaged. Their grandchildren grew, and great-grandchildren began to arrive, adding another generation to the family legacy. Gabriel held his first great-grandson at age 68 and felt the weight of time and continuity. This child would grow up in a world Gabriel could barely imagine, but he would grow up on this land with these values, and that gave Gabriel peace. On a warm evening in late summer, Gabriel and Clara sat on their porch as they had countless times before. They were both in their early 70s now, their bodies slower but their minds sharp, their love undimmed by time. "You remember what you told me that first day?" Clara asked. "When I said I did not know who I was or what had happened. I told you that you could start over. And I did." "We did," Clara smiled. "Best decision I ever made." Second best, Gabriel corrected. The best was choosing the name Clara Foster. That was the name of the woman who saved my life just as surely as I saved hers. Clara Irving now, she reminded him. Clara Irving, my wife, my partner, my love. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in brilliant colors. In the distance, they could see their family, Samuel working with his sons, Rose riding in with her husband, grandchildren playing in the yard. It was a scene of peace and prosperity, built on the foundation of love and hard work. Gabriel thought back to that day so long ago, tracking an elk through the canyon. He had been content then, or so he thought. But it had been the contentment of someone who did not know what he was missing. Clara had shown him what life could be when you let someone in, when you took a risk on love. "Thank you," Gabriel said suddenly. "For what?" "For saying you wanted to start over. For choosing to stay. For building this life with me. For everything." Clara took his hand, their fingers intertwining with the ease of decades of practice. "Thank you for finding me. For taking a chance on a woman with no memory and no past. For giving me a future worth living." As the stars emerged in the darkening sky, Gabriel Irving, the once silent cowboy, held his wife close and felt gratitude for every moment of the unexpected life they had shared. He had found Clara in a canyon, broken and lost, and together they had built something beautiful. Their love had created a family, a legacy, a life full of meaning and purpose. The silent cowboy had found his voice. The bride with no name had found her identity. Together, they had found everything that mattered, and they had lived every day of their shared life with gratitude and love. And as they sat together in the twilight, surrounded by the family and the land they had built together, Gabriel knew with absolute certainty that every moment, every challenge, every triumph, every ordinary day had been worth it. They had started over together in that canyon so long ago, and they had built a life more beautiful than either could have imagined. Their story, which had begun with a gunshot and a stranger in need, had become a testament to the power of love, choice, and the courage to start over. And it was a story that would continue through their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all of them carrying forward the legacy of the silent cowboy, and the bride with no name who had found everything by finding each other.